leads the country, and they're going downfield taking shots, averaging 380 pass yards a game. And to me, Joe Burrow's won the September Heisman, and now because of this passing game, I think LSU looks like a team that's legit as a national championship contender.
Well, it's funny, we talk about it all the time. What's the one word we've never used for LSU's offense we've used all season? Creative.
Yeah.
And that could bode well for them the rest of the season. Let's look at some of the marquee matchups in the month of October. You think there were good ones in September? Here's October. Auburn and Florida this weekend highlights the slates in the SEC. Auburn then has LSU in a few weeks. Big ones there. Wisconsin and Ohio State in the last weekend of the month should be a battle of top 10 teams, as might the Red River rivalry next week. And if Texas can pass a tough test against West Virginia on Saturday. So let's break that one down, because you know what's going on with Neil Brown, first year West Virginia, trying to rebuild that thing up a little bit. Talk to me about the West Virginia passing game, how it might pose a problem.
Okay, well, if Texas, I think, has a weakness so far this year, it's their pass defense. They're giving up 314 passing yards a game. So if you're West Virginia, Austin Kendall, the Oklahoma transfer playing quarterback, he's going to have to make plays throwing it downfield to what I think is a pretty talented group of wide receivers. Their personnel. Condensed formation, the defense reciprocates, and you got Sam Jones at receiver. He's kind of tucked in there. They give him that little pop pass, two blockers out in front, and again, another explosive play. Texas's secondary, guys, is decimated by injuries. They might have 3 starters miss this game in the back end. So if you're Austin Kendall, you got to make him pay for that. Now, he's struggled with accuracy this year on throws that have traveled 20 or more yards downfield. He's only completing 22%. That has to change if West Virginia wins this game.
Yeah, Neil Brown, I saw him this offseason. He told me he had to adjust the way he thinks about football going into the Big 12 because of the way their offenses produce points. And so it's different now. And now you're going against a Texas team where Sam Ehlinger has proven that he can do it and knows how to run offense. So you only see the plant right behind it. Devin Duvernay gets a big gain, gets a first down. This Texas team should be a top 10 team. They fell outside the top 10 after losing to LSU, but they're that good with Sam Ehlinger at quarterback. 3 games with three touchdown passes. They should be able to move the ball against this Texas team. Jess, I agree with you, though. Defense is going to be a question. It's going to be a high-scoring game. 61
points is the point total in this one in Vegas, if you're into that kind of thing. And you want to talk about defense, I'm sick and tired about talking about offense. Here's the defensive numbers. These numbers suggest we might be in store for some points. This is the 8th meeting between the schools since the Mountaineers joined the Big 12. The average total in the previous 7 games is over 65 points.
That's why we talked about offense.
Well, that's why you guys are analysts, and I'm just merely steering us through the conversation. Texas can't look ahead. They have OU next week. OU has Kansas, perhaps a little bit easier of a road for them. But the big news out of Kansas this week is they have lost their leading rusher, who was elected to leave the team. We don't know much about it. All we know is that Khalil Herbert left the team this week. He is their leading rusher. Big 12 now on ESPN Plus as an all-access look at the moment Les Miles learned of Herbert's decision.
As a monster.
Looking forward to it.
Hey, the big news in the college football world was Alabama hung 59 on Ole Miss. They moved up to number 1. And after an underwhelming performance by Clemson on the road against North Carolina, the Tigers dropped to 2 after being a 2-point conversion away from spitting the bit on the road. What about Trevor Lawrence? Came into 2019 as a Heisman frontrunner, but he hasn't quite put up the numbers to stay in that spot. He's already thrown more picks this season than he did all of last season, but consider that is with fewer than 250 fewer pass attempts. So you look at the drop. Again, I don't know how much the polls matter at this stage in the season. More of a reaction to what we saw. What is your reaction to the swap?
I agree with it. We talked about it on College Football Final this past weekend. And to me, Clemson through 5 weeks just is not as dominant as a team as they were during the second half of last season. And Trevor Lawrence has had some struggles at quarterback. That's well documented. Defensively, they don't look as good up front in the D-line. Understandable after losing 4 guys to the NFL draft. And listen, they survive a scare against UNC. At the end of the day, good teams find ways to win. But to me, I put Alabama number 1 with the way Tua is playing. I think right at this point, they can just outscore anybody.
Yeah, and we expected Clemson to be that same kind of team that could just reload on the defensive end, same the way that Alabama does every single season. And they haven't been that team. Now, I didn't move them down. They're the national champion. Every season, the national champion, while they're undefeated, stays as number 1 for me. I'm not saying that's the way it should be. That's just my rule. I do believe that games are tough to win. Any coach will say to you, as long as we're undefeated, we're happy. Clemson's undefeated. They continue to be in that spot that if they run the table in the ACC, they get into the playoff, I keep them number 1.
And we said as much, you were talking about final. A win is a win is a win in college football. But maybe perhaps this lends a conversation of those who believe it's just going to be Alabama and Clemson redux in a national
Clemson looks
championship game.
beatable for the first time in a long time.
And Alabama's starting 5 true freshmen on the defensive side of the ball. We'll see if that manifests itself
But they're 4 and
throughout
5
this
star
year. But, yeah, they complain.
It's not just regular true freshmen.
The big game this weekend, Auburn and Florida. First time these two programs have met since 2011. And, oh, by the way, the first time it's been a top 10 matchup since 1997. All of this is to say it's a big game at the Swamp.
I think it'll be a big momentum shifter for our team for this season. I think coming out with a win against, top 10 team.
You going to the Swamp? For one thing, I mean, that's history down there.
I think it could be a really defining moment. The whole world's going to be watching.
Man, it don't get no better than this, to be honest with you, but, they bring a lot to the table.
Well, anytime you're playing in the Swamp in front of 90,000 people going crazy, it gives you a huge home field advantage. And, that's one of the great things, having one of the premier home field advantages of all of college football. So I expect that to have a huge impact on the game.
How about first time Auburn's been to the Swamp since 2007? Speaking of quarterbacks in this one, Bo Nix just became the second freshman in school history to throw for more than 300 yards in a game, to throw for 300 yards in a game. And Kyle Trask is completing 79% of his passes after stepping in for the injured Felipe Franks. So let's talk about Bo Nix. Joey, what have you...
Moving forward with Georgia, LSU, and, of course, Alabama, they're going to need really good quarterback play out of this young kid.
Bo Nix has to work on his ball security.
Ball security a little bit.
That's a true freshman mistake.
It was late in the game.
Sixth time, by the way, Malzahn and Todd Grantham, Florida defensive coordinator, have met up. It'll be interesting to see if Malzahn goes run first with the young quarterback on the road or puts the ball in his hand and let him sling.
Matt was supposed to cut the tape before he fumbled.
Yeah, it was my fault. Play record.
Editing.
Speaking of slinging it, Kyle Trask, Florida offense picked up a little bit since he replaced Felipe
Ever
Franks.
since that fourth quarter.
You don't sound so sure.
Ever since that fourth quarter against Kentucky.
Tempo.
No, I do think the offenses look better with Kyle Trask at the helm. There's a lot to like about him, guys. He's 6'5", 240. He sees the field, arm talent, very accurate. What I love, though, he makes quick decisions. I think he does a better job than Felipe Franks getting the ball out of his hands quick, and it's another big play. I think his quick decision-making helps maximize this offense's ability to throw because they probably have the best group of receivers and tight ends they've had in a long time. I will say this, Kyle Trask better make quick decisions because that D-line from Auburn is serious, and Auburn is going to dial up some pressures on third down as well. He's not going to have a lot of time back there, so tick, 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 tick,
I think that's why Matt didn't
clock
sound
has
so
to be
sure.
going off in his head.
I'll tell you what, defensively, I'm looking forward to this one. Florida leads FBS with 24 sacks. Which quarterback comes up big in this series has always been a story. Speaking of, segue, you boys ready? It's that time of the program.
Gotta do it. Yeah.
It's that time of the program.
Best logo it is.
Now, let me tell you something about Florida Auburn. In the past, it's gone star power with quarterbacks, right? Yeah. So that's America's television treasures for all of us to enjoy.
Do you guys remember the movie Spaceballs? You guys remember the movie Spaceballs?
Yeah.
Well, they say, like, true freshman quarterbacks, the game goes fast.
Yeah.
Oh. That game was going ludicrous speed for me. That thing was so fast. Thank God for Javon Curse, our defense, and Fred Taylor. And Noah Brandeis came in. And
Jacquez had a decent game that day.
Yeah, he threw a touchdown that
That's a terrible pass.
who's
he throwing this ball to?
That was Takeo Spikes running at an 18-year-old Canadian kid.
The best part about that is we're watching the piece and Jess sees the throw and is like, no.
Don't do that. I love the lumberjack outfit, too.
Yeah,
At least didn't get me in the Canadian
That's the first time Jesse saw it. His eyes were closed when he threw that ball.
And maybe slow down Dobbins and Teague. But I think Ohio State's just too explosive offensively. And to me, Joey, it's watching Justin Fields and how he's progressing each week, right? We know he's got a lot of talent. Then you watch the Nebraska game, he's making quicker decisions. Guys aren't open. He's taking off running. He's checking the football down to his running backs now. He's improving. I just think Ohio State has too many weapons. I think Michigan State slows them down, but they can't stop them.
You almost sold that for a second there on that.
Yeah, it was good.
You came close to selling that. I watched that last game against Indiana. I didn't even recognize this Michigan State defense. They used to get off the bus sending a blitz. I watched them play against Indiana. They used to be up in your face, bumper and coverage. They were going to send a blitz, and you had to get it out before their man coverage would hold you down. That's not what they look like against Indiana. There were mistakes. They were playing a softer zone at times. And if they do the same thing against Ohio State that they did against Indiana, this will look like the Nebraska game for Ohio State. It'll be that bad. I've never seen a Michigan State defense make as many mistakes as they made in the Indiana game. Penix Jr. completed 20 straight passes against Michigan State. You've never heard of that before against a Mark D'Antonio defense. They're just not the same, and I think Ohio State's going to run away with it.
Yeah, and that's just it with Ohio State. With what they did last week to Nebraska, people thought maybe the Cornhuskers would ride the emotion of game day and all of that. Didn't pan out. And you look at a perfect marriage in college football, that perfect marriage has been Ryan Day and Justin Fields in his first year as head coach, transfers him from Georgia. Everything has been perfect, which obviously earned Coach Day a conversation with our Tom Rinaldi.
Takes it in the air from Urban Meyer, and he will go out a winner.
The moment, Rose Bowl, post-game in the locker room.
25th football coach at The Ohio State University.
When Urban turns and puts the whistle around your neck. What's the first thought you had, honestly?
It's kind of a blur, to be honest with you. There's not too many people who, the first time they put a whistle around their neck, didn't think about being the head coach at Ohio State. All the great coaches that have come before and the great history of Ohio State, that's the thing that hit me the most.
Where's the whistle?
It's in my office, right next to the picture of Coach putting it around my neck.
Why not use it?
Because if I used it, I'll probably be chewing on it and yelling and screaming. It'll get ruined fast.
Flat! Run away, flat! See how fast that's going to happen.
Both in terms of the symbolic and the concrete, you made a decision right away regarding the head coach's office. What did you do?
We kind of changed the insides of it. They can walk in and sit down on the couch, and I want to be approachable. I want to make sure they know they can always come in and have conversations with me. When someone comes in there, it feels like home. And if we call this family and that this is their new home, that's their living room.
You know Urban as well as anybody, and you know that in March or in April or any day on the calendar, it could feel at any moment like 4th and 1.
To hell with that! We don't want to coach average. I don't want to be around you. Why be around average?
How often do you want it to feel like 4th and 1?
I think that's the balance, and that's the art of coaching right now. I think that they have to feel loved. They have to feel like they're a part of something. They have to feel positive.
Good strain, Nick. Good strain, Nick. Good strain. Good strain.
But at the same time, have that edge to them and that uncomfortable feeling that they're going to fight and really work really, really hard.
How do you find that?
Yeah, I don't think there's an easy answer. Every day you wake up in the morning and say, how can I address this? How can I make our team tough? But then also create that love that they want.
I just want you to tell me, as I show you this picture, what you see.
Okay, I know exactly what happened here. We were at William & Mary. It was a tough game, and I kind of launched myself into the end zone and scored. At that point, it was within a touchdown. We actually lost the game, and that hurt when I landed on the ground right there.
Into the end zone for a touchdown, Ryan Day.
How would you rate the athleticism of the quarterback in that picture?
Not as good as it might look right there, no.
Fields off his back foot. Another Buckeye touchdown.
You haven't lost as a head coach here. What kind of loser are you?
Well, it won't be good, but we all are going to do everything we can to win and make this great and be here for the next 20 years. But, you know, when something doesn't go well, we have to hang in there and handle it like men.
Good ball. That's the timing right there.
What's one thing you could not have known prior to that whistle going around your neck that you know now?
You can say all you want, that you understand what it means to carry the burden of the wins and losses of Ohio State. It's on you at the end of the day. And there's nothing that can prepare you for that, because I know what's at stake. I know what these people expect. And so, you know, in my mind, I'm so competitive that I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make and continue it to be great.
If he's putting pressure on himself, it's hard to see it out of Ryan Day to this point in his Ohio State career. Anthony Russo, only Temple quarterback passed 400-plus yards in a single game. Can he continue that tonight against?
We take inventory of the football season now that the calendar has turned to October. And huge game here at the Swamp. Florida hosting Auburn, top 10 matchup. And according to the gambling metrics, maybe Auburn has outperformed its perception more than any other team in the country. That's because they're 5-0 against the point spread, as is SMU. The only two teams. 4 other schools are undefeated as well. They're at 4-0 with Okie State, one of them as well. So they're covering. That means almost every other school in the country has not covered at least one game. As for this one, earlier this summer, Florida was a 3-point home favorite in the advanced look-ahead line. Now the Tigers are road favorites here. Who you got?
I'm looking at the home team here, Doug. It's just Auburn is, you mentioned it there with this point spread. On the field, they've been as impressive as anybody has, as I came in with my own expectations. Crazy things just happen in the Swamp on these Saturday 3:30 games Eastern time, and I just feel like Dan Mullen can work up enough magic, keep it close enough. Gators make a play late. I'll take the home team with the points here.
I'm going to lay it. We're both kind of got leans here. I'm going to lay the short number. I trust Bo Nix, a true freshman here, a little bit more. Like to your point, Dan Mullen's done a wonderful job with quarterbacks, but the backup here, I just love what this Auburn team's done all season. They're legit, man. Not that you don't think so, but
if they win, they should be #1 in the country.
That's a valid point.
I totally believe that.
And if they do and cover, they'll be 6-0 against the spread.
Stanford Steve, collared shirt is television.
Love it.
You have T-shirt.
Put a collar on.
Are you guys ready for Speed Rush?
Do it.
All right.
Always.
2 minutes on the clock. You each get one timeout. Jesse, I'm going to start with you and go. Fill in the blank. Auburn's September schedule will blank their season.
Promote their season, let people know what it could be. I think a lot of people had question marks about Auburn with a true freshman quarterback. Could they beat Oregon?
I'm going to use my timeout right now.
Am I even allowed to finish?
Wow. No. I would like to use my timeout. My question is, when you say it's going to promote, are you saying they're going to run through it?
No, I'm just saying they're putting people on alert that this could be a team worth taking seriously. I couldn't really find the adjective.
Right on the fence.
Do you want you taking your timeout back?
Yeah,
I finished my
No, it's gone. Timeout's gone.
You said it's going to promote, and that usually means.
But I think it was good clarification. I know what Joey or Jesse was getting at. I wasn't buying it. I'm buying it. All right, clock again. Joey, you were a track guy. More impressive, Chuba running 84 yards in full pads in just over 9 seconds, or Christian Coleman running 109.76 seconds?
Anything in full pads is going to be more impressive. And I know Jesse was waiting for me to go against the Canadian and take the track runner. But no, you do this in full pads, running away from somebody on turf. You know, the track's always going to give your energy back to you when you put your foot down. Turf a little tougher, definitely impacts.
How many human beings have ever run the time that guy just ran on the 100-meter? Asafa Powell, Wind-Aided, and Usain Bolt?
I don't have that.
There's other football players. I know he's Canadian. But there are other football players that can do that.
All right. Do we have any idea, Jesse, of how good Oklahoma is?
Kind of. You expected their offense to be good with Lincoln Riley and Jalen Hurts transferring over from Alabama, but you know, the big question still is how good is this defense? Alex Grinch comes in to run it. He's supposed to play with more effort, and they are. And their D-line has been dominant, but they've still been a bit inconsistent. We'll know when they play Texas next week in the Red River Run.
Under a minute left. True or false? Given their lousy schedule, Clemson drops one. If they do, even the ACC, they'll miss the playoff, even if they win it.
True statement. They have one ranked game left, and that's Wake Forest, who's number 22 right now, I believe. Texas A&M, one of their other wins. They've already lost another game to Auburn at home. And so, yeah, if they lose a game, they will be out and should be out because they haven't been dominant.
All right, Jesse, SMU ranked for the first time since the days of the Pony Express. What is your favorite example of rule breaking from SMU?
Allegedly, there was a chairman of the board and also a Texas state governor, two-time, who was actively involved in this. So this went to the top of Texas politics. So to me, that's...
By the way,
man, they look
Pony
so
Excess, one of the great 30 for 30s we've done. Check it out. ESPN Plus. All right, 10 seconds left. Find me a team outside the top 8 in October who's going to make a run.
Texas. All they got to do is beat Oklahoma 2 times to get in. And
all they got to do.
That's all they got to do and slow down Jalen Hurts.
All they got to do.
They can do it with no defensive backs.
You kept your time out in the bank.
Jesse has mastered the talking without calling a timeout. That's what he's done. As the official, when I'm answering, he cannot speak unless he takes
put
a timeout.
6 words out of my first answer before
he
Joey
did. He hopped in early.
I called my timeout.
Basically, you're accusing him of SMU shenanigans.
Absolutely. He's cheating.
What if I...
You ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
What if I told you Jesse Palmer just cheated during Speed Rush? That's your claim. All right, let's talk about the Fair Pay to Play Act introduced in California, where they passed a law that college football players can benefit and make money from the use of their likeness and such. This has been a hot topic throughout the country this week. Joey, I'll start with you. What are your concerns with this law in California?
I need more details. It just seems to me that with this, along with the transfer portal now, we've seen De'Aaron King decide after 4 games he's going to sit out. I could see a case where, let's say Justin Fields goes to Ohio State and he has a great 4 games, and someone from a booster from Alabama, a booster from Clemson, somewhere else calls up and says, hey, if you transfer here, I will make sure that I use you to promote all of my businesses and pay you a lot of money.
Sure.
I think it opens up a window into true free agency and true I'm going to the highest bidder, which then means the teams with the bigger boosters, because the schools aren't paying, the bigger boosters will then control where athletes go in college.
I don't think this needs to be a state-by-state thing. I think federal legislature needs to make this consistent, whatever the law is going to be across the board. My fear is that certain states will offer to pay players directly. Other states will offer to set up funds for health care when the player's retired. And now you have teenagers making decisions about where they're going to school, not based on the education, not based on the football experience, but based on the dollars. I'm also worried about agents now getting involved, trying to represent these players who might not have their best interests at heart, and all of a sudden taking their focus away from the football field or the classroom. This needs to be, whatever it's going to be, consistent, regardless of where the school is, what state it's in, or what conference it's in.
And this is for all athletes in collegiate sports in the state of California. But the thing that's interesting to me, you brought up the agents, number one. But number two, I'm going to be interested to see what the NCAA does to respond to this, because now everything's focused on them and their response. Because what if states like Florida go in and make this move much like California? Florida doesn't have state income tax. So Florida passes this law, and athletes are doing that down in Florida. How does that benefit Florida?
I would hope that the NCAA would close those athletes out that aren't joined by the rules until we get these rules in place. And as many people as take these shots at the NCAA as an organization, all I say to you is, what's next? Don't just take your shots and say how terrible this organization is and we need to get rid of them. Come up with the idea that is next. And then give us a choice and an option to say, okay, that makes more sense. Not just say get rid of the NCAA and go nowhere.
I do want to point out, because this was such a major headline, it's not set to take place until January of 2023. It was passed on Monday, but not in act until 2023. Isaiah Wright, he's a good all-purpose athlete. See him in about 20 minutes here on ESPN.
Post throw here. On a rope, down the middle, big play. This is what we expected to see from this Michigan football team. Now, of course, it was just Rutgers. It's going to be tougher games down the road. But at least for Michigan, they came out and they looked like the team that has a lot of athletes, a lot of big playability, and Shea Patterson looked pretty good at quarterback position.
How about Michigan's season coming down to the first week of October? Yeah. I mean, it all comes down to this. After Wisconsin, the big one against Iowa. If they can't, they've lost 2 straight against Iowa and 5 of their last 6. As for tonight's game, Molly McGrath with ECU's head coach Mike Houston.
Coach, Temple's known for their physicality, especially on defense. How do you battle that tonight?
Well, the big thing we got to do is do a great job of matching that physicality to point of contact. You know, this team's growing. That's kind of been a staple of our programs over the years, and it's something that we will be in time. We'll get a great measuring stick tonight to see exactly where we are.
Defensively, what do you need to do to Temple's quarterback, Anthony Russo?
The big thing we got to do is try to slow their run game down. You know, if we can keep them from, getting in, great situations for the passing game, should be able to use our athleticism on the edge, hopefully get some pressure on him. But, very potent offense. They've had a lot of success this year. We've still got our work cut out for us.
All right. Thank you, Coach.
Thanks a lot.
Look at this. So Blake Prohl of House Prohl. Dad Ricky played receiver for the Arizona Cardinals back in the day. Demon Deacons. Love the Prohls, the receivers. Coming up in about 15 minutes.
He's part of the greatest show on turf.
So you guys give me a thought going into kickoff.
I feel like in a lot of ways, don't you feel Temple's kind of like a forgotten team in the American Conference? We always talk about UCF, and now SMU is a top 25 team. Temple's a really good football club, and on defense, they do an outstanding job. They're giving up 3.8 yards per play. Holton Ahlers, the freshman quarterback for ECU, very talented throwing and running it. But he's thrown 5 interceptions early this year. He's got to be very, very good with ball security if ECU is going to pull off this.
Yeah, Anthony Russo has 6 interceptions on this season. And so turnovers have been an issue for these teams. Temple sloppy last game against Georgia Tech. They only gave up 2 first downs, but they had 10 penalties. And moving forward, they have to clean up their play. They're talented, but you can't play that kind of football and continue to win.
We're officially kicking off week 6 of the season, first weekend of October. If we look at some of the games, Florida, Auburn, kind of a statement game for both programs. I had mentioned Michigan and Iowa. Do you guys believe that someone's season could be dictated on what happens Saturday?
I think that game in the SEC between Florida and I think one of those 2 teams is for real. I think one maybe not as good as what the rankings show right now, and I think this game in Gainesville on Saturday helps demonstrate that.
We're still trying to figure out Michigan. We're still trying to see what they're going to be. They had their best game, but it was Rutgers last week. They need to come out and prove they can play against a tough team. Jesse mentioned it, Iowa, much like Wisconsin, a downhill, couple tight ends, tough football team. Can Michigan stand up?
And look, Iowa's one of those teams that wasn't getting a lot of the preseason conversation in the Big Ten West, but Nebraska's fallen off a little bit. Wisconsin's risen up.
A little bit.
Yeah, well,
A lot.
after last week. Iowa can make a statement for themselves.
For sure. And the West is going to get interesting if Iowa wins this game. Iowa, Wisconsin, very physical football teams, very similar, could be interesting later.
Like the SEC, the Big Ten, a lot of their best teams are all going to play each other here in the next 3-4 weeks. So all these Power 5 conference races are going to start to kind of, I think, show themselves here soon.
And it'll be interesting to see if the Pac-12 can inch their way back up into the conversation. We'll see at halftime. For now, Pat McAfee, Matt Hasselbeck, and Adam.
Temple Owls, we already had our fair share of barbecue since we've been down in North Carolina. Adam Amin, Matt Hasselbeck, Pat McAfee, Molly McGrath down on the field in a moment as well. Conference opener for the Temple Owls. They go 3-1 with a ranked win in their non-conference slate. ECU has won back-to-back games for the first time in 3 years. A lot to be excited about on both sides.
I think the back-to-back wins have really energized this fan base. They've been tailgating for the last 3-4 hours. We drove through them. They're excited for this team to be good again. Coach Houston is hoping to do that for this ECU Pirates team with the Captain Hook all around the stadium.
And they're excited for Mike Houston to be here, a veteran coach, first year here. He brings a national championship at the FCS level. And on the other side, for Temple, you've got Rod Carey, another guy that had success elsewhere in his first year. The difference is Rod Carey isn't rebuilding. He's building upon the success that the current Baylor coach, Matt Rule, started recruiting this Temple team.
And this Temple Owls team live and die with the motto, Temple